Introducing BAP365, a cloud-based workflow application specifically designed for leading-edge high-output teams engaged in manufacturing and distribution operations. BAP365 is a modern business application platform with integrated workflow procedures starting from project quoting all the way through to order fulfillment and invoicing. Our order-to-cash workflows will instantly improve visibility, increase efficiency, reduce manual tasks, and lower input costs across your organization. The cost to implement BAP365 is one of the lowest in the industry. Utilizing our cloud infrastructure, you pay just a per-user monthly fee with 100% access to all the modules in the platform. Now, let me introduce you to Jeff Hansen, our principal architect, who will demo our order-to-cash workflows in BAP365.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. Today we'll be walking through the order-to-cash workflow for BAP365, which is our cloud application, a business automation platform designed for manufacturing and distribution. So in this demonstration, we'll be walking through this flow chart, which is the business process workflow for the order-to-cash business process. We have included a link to this document in the notes of the video so that you can follow along as you wish, as well as we have set chapter markers in the video so that you could jump around if there are specific transactions you are interested in working on. Additionally, we're using our BAP365 demo instance, which already includes master data that we'll be using today, which would include vendor master, customer master, item master, and other related master data elements. Now, if your company is brand new to BAP365, your instance would not have all these elements populated. Your setup process would go one of two ways. If you're integrated with QuickBooks Online, then your customer lists and your vendor lists and other related data would come in automatically from QuickBooks Online. Or our support team can help your business administrator to populate your master data into BAP365 to help your team to get started. One thing that I often encourage new users of BAP365 to do is to get logged into the application, but then the first thing to do would be to review a few of the help documents just to get familiar with how to move around in BAP365. So you can access the Help Center by clicking on the question mark icon in the toolbar on the top right. And I encourage folks to review the first three documents. So the first document is an application introduction. It just shows you the different elements of the application and their purpose. And that will help you get generally familiar with how to move around in the application. The second one would be to review the application home help document, just to get familiar with some of the terminology that we're using around the platform. And then lastly, review and understand the function landing screen, which you'll end up repeating this idea over and over again for every transaction that you do. So once you have a general understanding of those three documents, then I think you're ready to jump into the first transaction of this demonstration. All right, the first transaction in our order-to-cash workflow is the create customer quote transaction. And this is optional because of the fact that you may not create a quote for every sale you do. You may go straight into entering a sales order if you're repeating an order, or if the customer doesn't require a quote, you go straight to sales order to set up the order. But in this case, we're going to set up a quote. So we're going to head over to the sales module and go to manage sales quotes. Now, as mentioned in the introduction, if you reviewed the landing page help file, it just helps you understand moving around in the system. You can use the bottom portion of any landing screen to search existing records, or you can use the buttons on the top of the screen to create new records. So we're going to create a new record in this case. You have the ability of entering a quote against a prospective customer. So that would be a customer that is not already in your customer master list. But in this case, we are going to use an existing customer. So I've chosen the salesperson, which should be Lisa, and the customer, which is WireWave San Diego. So let's go ahead and create the quote. So as mentioned, Lisa's the salesperson, Ashley will be the customer service rep. If there is a customer reference, like an RFQ number or something like that, you can reference it here. You can reference the name of the contact at the customer as desired. Now down here is the header text of the quote. Now this text comes in by default on every new quote. Your business administrator can change this default text if they need to. Otherwise it's going to look like this every time you create a new quote. So let's go ahead and save that. We're going to go to the second tab, which is quote lines. So what we just did, the first is just set up the header of the quote. And now let's start adding a line to what we would like to add to the quote. So I'm going to add a line item. I'm going to choose the line type of fabrication or assembly. The other type of line you might have is a non-recurring service, so that's a one-time charge. But in this case, we'll go with assembly. And I've chosen this item number, which is a circuit card for this customer. And what the system is showing you here is the last time we built this was on April 7th, and this was our cost. So unit cost. So this is what the material costs for us to build it, and this is what the labor cost to build it per. So circuit cards, usually you're doing large lots. This is the cost for each. So now that you know your costs are $43.83, then you can set your own price that you're going to charge the customer based on that. So let's say we're going to build 500 at $145.83, and then you can put some delivery comments. So we'll say that this is going to be due on May 1st and build per print as detailed on the customer purchase order. All right, so we'll add that line, click save. Now that we have a header record and a line item record, we can then view this document. So there's our quote. The system assigned a quote number to it. Here's the general information, and we said we were going to make 500 of these, delivered by May 1st. Cost to the customer is $143.83 for a total job cost of $71,915. All right, we've created the quote, so we're ready to email this quote. So we can go ahead and do that. And again, when you look at the customer master setup, you'll know that there is the option to add contacts to your customer, and when you do that, you can now send documents directly to your customer. So in this case, there's a customer record for WireWave San Diego, and Lisa is the contact. So we're going to go ahead and please review this quote and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks. All right. And we're going to go ahead and send that quote. So anytime you email a document, as we just did for this quote, the system will send the email as the user. So in this case, I was logged in, and it sent it as me to the customer, and then it copies me. So now this document email is now in my inbox as well. So this allows you and your customer to communicate back and forth regarding this quote document. All right, so that completes the creation of a quote in BAP365. You obviously could repeat this and have multiple line items on your quote. You might have a service item, etc. You can add as much detail as you want, but as soon as the quote document is to your liking, it's ready to email to your customer. The next transaction in our ordered cash business workflow is to create a customer master. Now you'll see here in the flowchart that it mentions as required. The reason for that is once you've created a customer once, you don't have to create it again. So if you're just doing additional orders against a customer that already exists, you do not need to create a new customer master, and you can move on from this transaction. But we're demonstrating creating a customer master in this chapter, so we'll go ahead and create a customer master. As mentioned before, master data setup is usually performed by an administrator or by your finance team. The reason for this is most businesses like to control the master data with a small group of people to make sure that the standards for the master data, your vendor list, your customer list, are consistent and meet your company standards. So in this case, we're going to go administrator, customer master. And as mentioned before, I can search existing customer records here or use the new customer button on top to do new. So it's a good practice to search for the customer you're about to create to make sure it doesn't already exist. And in this case, it does not. So I'm going to go straight into creating a new customer master. Now you'll notice on top this warning that is being provided. It's letting your users know that this particular instance of BAP365 is integrated with Intuit QuickBooks Online. And so the warning is suggesting that your users go to QuickBooks first to create this customer, and then you can sync that data back. In this case, we want to create it in just BAP365, so we're going to move forward. So my customer is Henry Logistics Incorporated, 1234 Main Street, San Diego, California 92131, USA. And most companies like to, if there's a suite involved, they put that on the second address line. And then the third address line is for further details if needed. All right, so we've entered the basic data we need to create a customer. Go ahead and click create. All the defaults are set for us, and this customer is immediately available for use across the platform. Now some just additional comments. So the address we entered on the first step was brought forward to the Sites tab. So Sites is all about address. Some customers want you to ship to one address but invoice to another address. So this tab allows you to enter multiple sites against your customer. And you can set which one's shipped to, which one's billed to here as shown. Now the third tab is contacts. So contacts are important because you want to capture all the contacts you have with this customer, both for yourself to reference back, but also so that you can email or allow the system to communicate with this contact as well, directed by you. So I'm going to go ahead and add a contact, Henry Ralph. His address is henry@shipit.com. Now this is asking you, is he in sales? Is he in purchasing? Is he in management? So he's our customer, so he's purchasing from us. So I'm going to say he's purchasing in management. Go ahead and click save. And so now Henry Ralph is available in our contacts tab. And you repeat that step for every contact you have for the customer. All transactions in BAP365 have notes and attachments. So notes would just be historical notes that you want to make regarding this customer. They're only viewable by internal users. They're not shown to your customers. And then additionally, you have an attachment tab which shows up all across the system. Now, specific to a customer master, you may have a contract that you want to record, a resale certificate, a credit report. You can attach all those here for you to reference down the line. So this completes the creation of a customer master record in BAP 365. We are now at the third transaction in the order to cash business workflow, and that transaction is to create an N-item master record. Also mentioned here as required. So again, whenever you create an item master, once you've created it, you can reuse it multiple times. That's actually the definition of master data, is you enter it once and you can use it multiple times. So the as required is you would only enter a item master record if you're creating a new sales item. This is the end item. This would be the item that you're shipping to your customer. So let's go ahead and go create that. So as mentioned before, administrators and finance are generally the ones that create master data. However, in this case, we're talking about item masters, and most manufacturing companies lean on their engineering group to control item masters. And so this particular element is available in the engineering, finance, and admin modules. So we'll go into engineering master items. I can search my master items here as shown below. These are items previously created. However, in this case, we want to create a new number. So as I mentioned in the previous chapter, if you're creating master item, I always like to test to make sure it does not already exist. So I'm going to say this is for Henry Logistics. I'm going to do HLog. There's nothing for HLog. So I'm going to go ahead and create an item. So it's going to ask you, what is this item? Is it a finished good, an assembly, or a raw material? In this case, it would be a finished good, because in this step of the workflow, you're creating the item number for a shippable item. So I'm going to do HLog for Henry Logistics, and then generally your customer would have an item number that you would want to follow. So I'm going to do 001-01, and then this is a assembly logistics log master. Okay, go ahead and create that item. Now we chose the item class on the first screen, and that allowed us to set all kinds of attributes across all these tabs. So generally when you're creating an item master, all you really need to do is answer the questions on the first screen, and then you can make changes as needed here. So in this case, I want to specify who my buyer is for this customer, and then who the engineer is for this, and then who the quality engineer, and then the salesperson. Now you may just know these answers by default, but this allows you to set defaults for the item. So I'm just going to jump through these tabs just to give you a general introduction. If this is specific to a customer, which it is because it's for Henry Logistics, you can set the default customer. In the planning, there's all kinds of planning attributes, lead time, unit of measure. My recommendation is you just let the system drive this. However, if you know specifically what you would like to be set here, you can make changes as needed. So this is a make part because it's an assembly. So there would be no default vendor in this case unless you purchase from a vendor and immediately resell it. You could put the default vendor here. That helps your purchasing team. And then quality control. So if you do purchase this item, you can choose to set this for receiving inspection, meaning if a purchase order is opened, you can send it to receiving inspection before it goes into inventory. Then some logistics options here. These are all set by default. In most cases, you will not need to change these. If you want to add this to an item family, there are no item families set up here, so that is not needed. And then you can set yield and cost attributes. Now the whole costing module of this application runs automatic, right? So it just watches inventory as it comes and goes, and it starts to set the costing levels for this item. So I'll go ahead and click Save. And that completes this step of the order to cash workflow, where we created an end item master. All right, so we are now at the step in the order to cash business workflow to create the sales order. In our previous step, we created an end item master that we could now add to our sales order to set up a live order in the system. So let's go do that. So we're back in sales. As you can see on the workflow, we're back in the sales swim lane and to create sales order. So this generally happens either in the customer support or sales department. Your company may have different rules on who can enter a sales order. So we'll go sales, manage sales orders. So we'll go ahead and say new sales orders. It's asking who's the salesperson and then who's the customer. So in this demonstration, we've been using Henry Logistics. So I'm going to create the sales order. It's assigned an order number for us here, and all the defaults are coming in from the customer. Now, the customer in most cases will supply a customer purchase order number. So we're going to enter an order number that would come from them. And this is where, as a salesperson, you're setting the terms. What's the tax method? Are we charging sales tax, or you, in your case, are you selling? Who's the customer service rep? Is there any reference number that should be mentioned? Or I'll do contract 1050. How am I going to ship it? Lots of people like this one best way. That just allows your shipping department to make the decision. But if you want a specific carrier, you can choose it there. Where are you going to supply this order from? From your primary facility. So this control code idea, you have the ability to enter a sales order but not allow it to ship for whatever reason. Maybe you're waiting on pricing. Maybe you haven't received the customer PO yet. You just don't want to ship it. You want to stop it from being able to ship. Credit hold's another reason, or order hold. This just allows your sales team to block an item from shipment if they need to wait on additional data to come from the customer. In this case, it defaults to OK to ship, which will allow us to go ahead and send that out. Gives you the option to select the customer contact if there's additional contact here, and then set the date needed. So if you reviewed the quote workflow step with us, we put in our quote that we are going to use May 1st as the need date, and then ship FedEx ground on customer account number 123456. So these are just order comments, and I'll show you where those come in later. So a good rule of thumb when you're working in BAP365 is when you're done with a tab, go ahead and save the record and then move on to the next tab. So now we're going to add a line item. So in the previous step, we created an item for an item master record for a shippable item. So it was this HLOG001. So here we go. And we are going, next thing the system wants to know is how much are you charging for this item? So your customer PO will probably spell that out. So we're going to say it's 150 per item. And based on our research, our costs are $89.95. And then customer PO line 1, ship FedEx on customer account. All right. You can set a sales commission if you choose. So we're gonna do a 2% sales commission, and we are going to ship 500 of these by May 1st. And then delivery comments are here as well. Okay, just to let you know, ship line item comments show up and are viewable by the customer. Delivery comments are viewable by your shipping department. So if you want to tell your shipping department something specific, you can put it in the delivery comments. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add this line. So that's our current total. So as mentioned, every time you finish a tab, you click save. And then you'll see you have your one line item here as well. So that's all I need to do in this case. And so now I'm going to, you notice that the order status is still new. So it's not a firm order until you book the order. And then once you book the order, it becomes available as a live order. So we'll look at the item summary screen on a different step. But just to, so that you see the open order we just created, there's now 500 of this item due on May 1st, 2025, as we set up in the sales order. And the current status of this item right now is you have none on hand and you have none on order. So your materials or production team has work to do to now support this order as you've created. And that follows the standard business flow. Usually sales enters the sales order, and then the team gets together, create a bill of materials, upload that to the system. Purchasing starts bringing in raw material, and production will start to assemble and test that item. So this completes the creation of a sales order. So once the order is booked, you can then view the document as shown here. So here's the sales order. Here's our sales order number for this customer. Here's the order date, which is today's date. Here's those notes that I mentioned are viewable by the customer. And this is just a summary of what the order has been put together. You can email this document to your customer. So in this case, Henry Ralph is our logistics customer in this case. If I click send, that will send off to him. So that completes the creation of a sales order. All right, we're at the 5th step of the order to cash business workflow. And in this case, that would be create bill of materials. So in the last step, we created the sales order for the item in question. So I'm going to look up this item. So here's our sales order number. Here's our item number. But in this case, we need to create the bill of materials to build this item. So that's step number 5 here. And so let's go do that. So bill of materials are generally managed by your engineering team. Production may also be editing bills of materials. But let's go engineering bills of materials. You can search if you have one. So this is the item number is HLOG 001. It does not have a bill of materials, so I'm going to go ahead and create one. All right, so I'm going to enter my item number, which we created a couple steps back, and we're going to create a BOM. All right, it creates some IDs for you because it tracks the versioning of this particular BOM item. So let's add some items. So in this case, we're making an assembly logistics log master, and we're going to need a few headlights for that. So let's say we need 4 headlights. So you choose the item, you enter the quantity per assembly, and you enter the start-stop dates. So it defaults to today. So there you go. I'm going to go ahead and save that line item. And then let's see what else we have here. Let's grab a body element. So we need one body, 4 headlights. All right, and you just keep repeating this step. And let's see what else we need here. Brake design. So 4 brake designs. Save. T. Toner hopper. 3 of those. All right, so what we're telling the system is in order to make an HLog 001-01, we need 1 body, 4 brake discs, 4 headlights, and 3 toner hoppers. Okay, if we're happy with that, we can click Save and click Complete. Now, one thing to pay attention to is this particular BOM is still in work status, so it cannot be used elsewhere in the system until it's set complete. So let's go ahead and set this item complete. And now we have a complete BOM that's ready to use. Now if I come back here and search my HLog, now my version 1 of my BOM is here. I'm going to view this BOM again, and then I'm going to put it in edit mode. So it's going to create a version 2 of that BOM. And let's see, maybe, potentially I forgot to add something. So I can add a battery. So we're going to do 2 batteries. Save, mark it complete. All right, so now my batteries are there. So here's my 5 items that are on my bill of materials to make this assembly. So you can continue to repeat that step. You can print the BOM if you would like. You can email the BOM if you would like. In further steps, I'll show you where this data is carried forward to further transactions. So that completes the creation of a bill of material in BAP365. All right, in our next step of the order to cash business workflow, in the previous step we created the bill of materials, and in this step we're going to create assembly routing. So an assembly routing is when you're running this order through production, where do you want this order to go? Usually starts in your stock room where you pull the raw material, and then it goes to your first production workflow step and forward on through quality and then back to final inspection. So let's go work on a new assembly routing. So this is also managed in the engineering module. So I'm going to go engineering assembly routings, and then I'm going to search for my item. It's not there already, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new. So HLog, there's the item that we created previously. I'm going to create the routing. So by default, it brings these work centers in. So the stock room is work center 4000. They're going to kit the material. Production is where it's assembled. Then it's inspection, and then it is finished goods. So in this case, you could just accept the default routing and continue on, or if you want to edit the routing, you can do that. So I'm going to add a operation 21. It's a labor operation. What's the work center? I'm going to say production as well, and then confirm assembly of all BOM items. Okay, add an operation, return. So now I have 10, 20, 21, 800, and 900. So now I have a specific routing for that. Now, you can take the routings further, which we'll show in a different demonstration, but you have the ability to store build instructions within the routing, so that every time you build this item, the technicians on your shop floor can reference the build instructions. So we'll cover that in a different demonstration, but just be aware that that's possible. All right, like we talked about in bill of materials, when you're working on an assembly routing, By default, it's in work status until you set it complete. So I'm going to go ahead and set this complete. And so now it's available for downstream transactions as we move along in our workflow. All right, we're moving on in our order to cash business workflow. We are now at the step here in planning to create the work order. In the previous steps, we created the bill of materials and the routing, which are required in order to be able to create the work order. So let's go ahead and do that. So in general, the work orders are managed in the production module, generally by a production planner. So we will go there and create our work order. So we can search for existing work orders to see if there are any out there for the item we're working with. There are not. So we'll create our new work order. And so it's asking you, who's the company, who's the facility, are you doing a production work order, rework, depot, or service work order? We're doing production. And now it asks you for the item number. Here's our item number we've been working with. I'll be the planner. How many do we want to build? If we remember from our sales order, we created a sales order for 500, which are due on the 1st of May. So I'm going to make this work order due the day before, so April 30th, for a quantity of 500. I'm going to go ahead and create that work order. So by default, this work order is in plan status. If I click the item number above, it takes us back to the item summary that we were mentioning early. So currently we have a demand order, this sales order, but we do not have any supply orders. And the reason the work order is not showing up here yet is it's still in plan status. So we're going to review the details before we release our order. So we know that this is for Henry Logistics and that the sales order number is this one. And we're going to add a .1 on the back of that, and that just tells the system it's line 1 of that sales order. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and that linked it to the sales order. So we're good on that. Let's look at our material requirements. Now this came in from the bill of material we created, right? So we set the quantity per assembly on all these items. However, since we're building an order for 500, it's showing all the material requirements here. So I need 500 bodies, 1,000 batteries, 2,000 brake discs, and 2,000 headlights, and 1,500 toner hoppers. Okay, so that all looks good. And then the routing that we created, if you reviewed with us, so it brought in the standard routing, and then we added a special routing step at operation 21 as seen here. So that all looks good to go. Later down the line, we can add labor to this work order if we choose to. We can record serial numbers as needed, and then notes and attachments are also available here. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then I'm going to release this order to make it available for the shop to start working with. And if I again click the item summary, you'll see that now this work order has shown up in the item summary screen, showing that I have a demand order for 500 on this sales order, and now I have a work order that's going to supply these items. So back to our work order screen. Generally, you have a work order traveler that travels with the work order as it's being done. So that's provided here. You could print this off, which enables the team to scan this work order through the process as needed, and then go from there. Now, any build instructions that you may have added to the routing will show up here as well. You see here our operation 21, which was confirm assembly of all BOM items. So your engineering team or whoever authors your build instructions can really expand on this routing and put in a lot of detail as needed. So that completes the creation and release of a production work order in BAP365. All right, moving on to the next steps in our order to cash business workflow in BAP365. So the next two steps actually happen in tandem. So in the previous step, we created the work order, and you saw that we now have a supply order that is supplying the items that will eventually be shipped against the sales order that we created a few steps ago. So after the work order is created, there's an overnight process known as MRP, or Material Requirements Planning. It runs every night, and it basically looks at all the open work orders and starts planning for the raw materials you need for those work orders. And so the next step after MRP runs would be in your purchasing swim lane. But in this step, we are going to run the purchasing supply needed report. That exists in a few places, but the primary place where this exists is in the report collection of planning. So under report library, you have report collections. Different departments have their own collection. And in this case, we're going to go to planning. We're going to go to the second report in the list, which is purchasing supply needed. So I'm going to just click export because it's going to run against all orders. So luckily, as you've seen in the previous steps, we're working with Henry Logistics, and we're working with this HLog item that we created, and there's our work order we created in the previous step. And so what this report is telling you, for this sales order, for this customer, for this item, you need the following components brought in order to build this out, right? So we reviewed this in the Material Requirements tab of the work order when we created the work order. But we need, by May 1st, we need 500 of this, 1,000, 1760, 1950, 1500. So this report tells you what this order needs, so specific to the sales order we're talking about. And if there were other orders out there that needed the same item, it's telling you the quantity there. And then it's telling you what your cost was last time that you ordered this item, and then when that cost date was. So all good information. So in general, your purchasing or your buyers would work from this list, and as soon as sales orders are entered, as we did in previous step, we entered the sales order. Let's pull up our flow chart. So we entered our sales order. Engineering created the bill of materials. They created the assembly routing. Your planning department or production created the work order. MRP ran overnight, right? And then we got us to this step of run the purchasing supply needed report. So that's what we're looking at this step. So now our purchasing folks are ready to take action on this raw material that is needed. So that'll complete this step in the workflow, and then the next step would be for the buyer to actually create orders or purchase orders to bring this raw material in. So we'll show that on the next step of the order to cash workflow. All right, in the next step in our order to cash business workflow, we just ran the purchasing supply needed report on the previous step, which let us know what we need to order from a purchasing point of view. So that is this report. And so now we're going to create raw material purchase orders to send to our supplier. So in this case, I'm going to be able to order all these needed items from the same vendor. So I'll show you how that's done. So we're going to create a purchase order. So in this case, we're going to purchasing and we're going to manage purchase orders. And we know this is a new order. We don't even have to search for existing orders because the report that we ran told us that we need these specifically. So most folks know Uline. They are a common vendor used across all of our clients. So we'll use them as an example. Okay, so I'm created a PO for Uline, and then once again, I'm going to bring this report over and do a few things to simplify my work here. All right. So I need 500 of this item. So this is where you become a copy and paste master. So most folks would go over to the third tab, which is the grid line, because you can see all the line items the best from this screen. So you have two options in a purchase order. You're either ordering an MRP line item or you're ordering an expense line item. In today's case, this is an MRP line item because this is raw material we need to bring in for a build. But you may also use purchase orders to buy offline supplies, packaging supplies, office supplies, computer hardware, that kind of thing. You can use the expense portion. But in this case, we're going to do an MRP line item. So the first question is, what's the item number that we're ordering? Here's our body line. And we are ordering 500. And then the system is remembering last time I bought it for $20. So there's my 500 of line 1. I can reference the work order if I want. So here's a little just side. You can, on this screen up above, you can search an item and you can see that it's short on this item or it's required by this item. So now back to my purchase order. That was just kind of a shortcut for me to go find the work order number. And I need this in by the 20th so that we can build and ship by the 1st. Okay. So here's the item number, 520 each. There's my work order, add the line. All right, continuing down my list, the next item I need to order is this battery, and I need 1,000 according to this report. So I'm going to add that to my order. I'm going to do for 1,000, and I forgot to enter my work order, which is here, so I can just copy that down. Okay. All right, so let's move on to our third item in the report, which is a BD, brake discs. All right, so here's that. My report says that I need 1,760 of this item. So again, it's bringing in my last cost. There's my work order. Okay. And let's go back to our report, get our next item. HL001, I need 1952 of this one. $107,210, boom. Okay. Back to my report. Last item is a toner hopper. I need 1,500 of these. Add an MRP line item. 1,500. This tells me I've never bought this before, so I need a price. So I did some research and know that it's $15.95, and there's my work order. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click save on that. Update this as needed. I'm the buyer. Those are the terms. This is how they should ship. There's no contact. Let's say ship to arrive by 4/20/2025. Okay, I'm going to click save. And then I'm going to submit this for approval. And what this is going to do is send it through your company approval workflow, which we'll show you now. So I'll go ahead and click submit. And a shortcut for a buyer would be you can view the material requisition workflow from the purchase order management screen. You can just click the requisition. I'm going to, it was sent to Katie because she's the default approval for this facility. But since I have administrative rights, I'm going to approve it and leave a note. Approve it. Okay, so the spend approval is done. It's assigned it back to me for the order creation. I already created the order as you saw me entering it. So I'm going to just say complete the record. All right, so this closes out the requisition. So to review, I created the PO over here and I added my line items. And then once I had all my data in there, I submitted it for approval. It went through the approval workflow and then has become available for me. So now if I click save again, the approval workflow is done. It's asking me to firm the order. So similar to what we did in the sales order, you need to firm a purchase order. It's not available in the system until it's firm. So let's just look at one of our items. You'll see for this body, we have none on order yet, and the reason is this order is not firmed. So let's go ahead and firm this purchase order. All right, it is now firmed. So just to view it one more time, so let's look at that body. Now it says that I should get 500 of these in by 420 from Uline, and these 500 are needed for this work order, as we mentioned in previous steps of the workflow. All right, so the next step is to send this order to the vendor, right? So you click print order so you can review it, make sure it's accurate for what your needs are. Make sure your pricing is what you expect, and now you can email this document. So Jim Johnson is the default contact for the Uline vendor, and so his name was already selected. So I can send this order over to Jim. Hello, Jim. Please ship to arrive by 4/20/2025 as requested. Thanks. All right, so we're going to go ahead and send that off to him. So we've completed the creating a purchase order based on the MRP purchasing supply needed report. So now tonight, MRP will run again, and then these items should fall off that report because now there's a firm purchase order in the system that is ready to be received as soon as the vendor ships the order in. So that completes this step of the create purchase order for BAP365. All right, the next step in the order to cash business workflow is to receive supplier shipments here in the logistics swim lane. In the previous step, we ran the purchasing supply needed report, and then we created purchase orders for the raw material we needed based on that supply needed report. Now, and we've sent that purchase order to our suppliers, and they eventually shipped in the material, and now we're ready for our receiving department to receive in the purchase order. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that was in the logistics swim lane, which means it's in logistics. We're going to go to logistics, receiving purchase order receipts. I'm going to say new receipt, and the supplier paperwork should contain our PO number, which it does. So I'm going to put that here, and so it's asking the receiving department, which of these line items do we want to receive? So we want to receive all of them, because the vendor shipped the order complete, and then I'm going to create a receipt. Okay. And then we ordered 500. How many did we receive? 500, 1,000, 1760, 1952, 1,500. In order to help receiving avoid mistakes, as you notice, this screen defaulted to quantity received 0. That way it directs the user to verify the quantity that they have and receive it in. So in most cases, the vendor will have a packing slip number, and it will come in via a specific carrier, and then I'm just going to record the tracking number here for later reference. And if there's any comments, order shipped, order arrived in good condition. Okay. All right. If I do have a packing slip, I can attach it here, as I mentioned in previous steps. But in this case, we are ready to go ahead and receive this in. Before I do that, I'm just going to click on one of the item numbers. Let's look at the break disk. So you'll see here that 1,760 are due by April 20th from Uline, and I have that same order here. So as soon as I receive this in, we'll watch this PO go away, and then it will become live inventory for this line item. So I'll go ahead and click save, which will post the receipt to inventory. Alright, if I come back here and look at the break discs again, now I have none on order, but I have new inventory that just arrived today into our receiving department. Alright, so this completes the step of posting a purchase order receipt. As I mentioned, your receiver can attach packing slips, which we highly recommend. This allows all users across the system to be able to view documents across the transaction. So in a purchase order's case, you may attach the vendor quote. In the PO receipts case, you may attach the packing slip from the vendor. Those become very handy for all users, including accounting, when they want to reference what was transacted. So this completes the transaction of a purchase order receipt in BAP365. So continuing with our order to cash business workflow, in the previous step, we transacted the purchase order receipt against a purchase order in the logistics module, and that posted through as expected. So the idea here is you had a purchase order, the purchase order was received, that inventory now shows in receiving, and it needs to be put away into an inventory location. This mirrors the process in most high volume warehouse operations, where the receiving team is one group of people and then the warehouse team is a second group of people, and so the warehouse team would be the ones to do the put away transaction. So we'll do that now. So over in logistics, we're going to go to inventory transactions, and in this case we want to process a PO receipt put away, and here's this receiver that we just processed in the previous step. And so here's all of our items, and so it's asking us to put these items away. So the first thing you need to know is where you're going to put them away. So this is all raw material, so right now we're going to put them in our Warehouse 100 RMI location, which is short for raw material inventory. So we'll look at our break discs again just to review what we're doing. So we have this receipt that was done today, 500-202. It's sitting in receiving right now. We're about to put it away, and once we do that, then it should show in the inventory location. So we have all of our items, we have all of our locations. I'm going to go ahead and save this transaction. You can see it's no longer in the list because that item was put away. I'm going to come over here and just refresh this screen, and then you can see that now this 1760 that we put away is now in Warehouse 100 location RMI. Now you can click the lot number, which in this case happens to also be the receipt number, and then you can see all the items in that lot number. So there's our body for 500, battery, discs, headlights, toner. And if you scroll down, it's showing you where that inventory is right now. So all of this is showing in Warehouse 100 location RMI, and here's your quantity. This screen becomes very valuable because often in this business process, the buyer or a planner will know that this material came in, but wants to know what happened to it. So at this point, it's sitting in inventory, so that's all fine. Eventually, we're going to consume this material into a work order, and then we're going to ship it on a sales order. So this helps the entire team to be able to see where all this material has gone. So for now, the PO receipt put away transaction is now complete, which completes this step in the PO receipt put away in BAP365. Okay, continuing our order to cash business workflow. In the previous step, we performed the PO receipt put-away transaction, which moved inventory from receiving into our raw material inventory location. And so the next step here in the workflow is to issue the material to the work order. So again, we're in logistics, inventory transactions, work order material issue. Our work order is 10210. So here we go. Here's all the items that we created in our BOM in previous steps. And here's all the suggested inventory locations. So you'll notice that you see 413, which is the lot date, on 3 of our items, but 2 of our items actually show up with a earlier date. The reason this is happening is the system is supporting first in, first out inventory consumption. So there was an order of 240 that was available in inventory that it's suggesting for this item that you pull first. So we'll go ahead and accept the defaults. For this item, it's the full 500. For this item, it's going to be 240. For this item, it's going to be 48. For this item, the full 1500 and the full 1000 on this item. So I'll go ahead and put that. And then I'm going to come back into this work order and circle back around and grab the balance due on these 2 items. We already consumed the first lot that was available, and now here's our 1760 and our 1952, which we are going to consume into the work order as well. So I'm going to go ahead and post that. All right, so in review, we went logistics, inventory transaction, we click work order material issue. In this case, this work order is now fully, the material is fully issued. There's no open material requirements, and so there are no further items to transact into this work order. So this completes the work order material issue step of our order to cash workflow in BAP365. All right, continuing in our order to cash business workflow. In the previous step, we issued material into the work order. So that material was ordered, raw material was ordered on a PO. It was received into receiving. We put it away into inventory. We issued it to the work order in this step. And so now we're moving over to the production tab where this order is ready to be assembled by the production team. So we'll see how that's done. This is more of a physical step than a transactional step because the material has all been issued essentially into WIP or work in progress to allow production to go ahead and continue. So if your company chooses, you can put up shop floor terminals for your assemblers to be able to access. And so that's in the shop module, and then you go to shop floor workbench. It gives your technician the ability to log in based on their badge number. And then once that's done, they can enter their work order that they're working on. So in this case, if you remember, if you were with us when we did the assembly routing, we have the standard routing plus we have these workflow steps. So if you're in production and you're an assembler, you're looking for production workflow steps, you can click here and view this. I mentioned in the assembly routing step that you have the ability to add a work instruction document, which would show here. You can also add additional information regarding this step. And then additionally, there would be a step 21, which was some further confirmation to be performed by production. And then according to this routing, the next step for this assembly after your technician assembled it is to send it onward to QC inspection, quality control inspection. And then you can see the last step in the work order is receive this back to finished goods. So this shows you what your shop floor technician could see if you choose to use this function. So this completes the production assembly step of the order to cash workflow in BAP365. Okay, continuing on with our order to cash business workflow. In the previous step, we released the work order to production. In the step before that, we issued the raw material and essentially moved all that material into WIP, or work in progress. And then in the previous step, we showed you how the production assembler or the production technician could access the work order documents to view the assembly routing and any attached instruction. So once that's complete, the item is now assembled and it's ready to move on to the next step, which would be quality inspection. And in the quality module, they have the ability to create a certificate of conformance. So how that generally works is the item makes its way to the QC department. They inspect it against the drawing or whatever work instructions are provided. If they find it to be compliant to the build instructions, then they will issue a certificate of conformance record. So we're going to go over to quality in this case, and we're going to go manage certificate of conformance records. I can search existing ones here and below, but I want to create a new one. And so let's do our 100-210, which is our assembly we've been working on. So here is that assembly. Here's the work order we've been working with. Here's the sales order that's related to that. If you were with us when we created the sales order, you remember we added a customer PO number. So in this case, if you click the work order, the quality inspector can view the work order. If there's any attachments either here or on the routing, they can view that there, which they're not in this case. But this is for a quantity of 500. That's the order quantity. And so they would need to confirm what quantity they have here for inspection. In this case, we're going to say that 500 made it all the way through to inspection with no additional issues. So I'm just going to go ahead and click save. So that created this COC document number, or certificate of conformance, for a quantity of 500 for the inspector that's currently logged in, which is me. So you notice this is in draft mode. So you can view the document, but it will have this watermark of draft copy do not ship, meaning it has not been fully certified by the quality inspector. Once they mark this complete, it asks you to confirm. Okay, now this COC record is now complete. You can view the document, and in most cases this document would ship with the product, showing that the inspector has reviewed the product to meet all specifications provided by the customer and allows you to move it forward to shipping. So they would either download or print this. In most cases, people print this, and then they forward this with the material onward to the finished goods warehouse for them to complete the next step. So this completes the creation of a certificate of conformance in BAP365. All right, continuing the order to cash workflow business process. In the previous step, we completed the creation of the certificate of conformance in the quality module, which happened after the assembly of the order was complete by production. They moved it to QC for quality control. It was inspected, and the inspector found it to pass all requirements, and therefore they issued a certificate of conformance. So in this case, we are moving down to our next step. The next step would be to transact the work order receipt to finished goods. So we're back in the logistics world. We're going to go back to inventory transactions. We're going to do a work order assembly receipt because we're receiving in the assembly. And the paperwork that comes will have the work order with it, as well as the COC document. So we're going to receive in 500. It's asking you how many are you receiving and where do you want to put it away. So in this case, we're going to receive 500 into the FGI inventory location. I'm going to click the item summary here just so I can kind of watch this happen. This is ready to go. I'll go ahead and click save. So it's saved. You'll notice this work order was open and we had none on hand, but because I just finished that work order, if I refresh this, the work order is now closed and the finished assembly for this item is now available in FGI, which is finished goods inventory. So this completes the work order receipt step of the order to cash workflow in BAP 365. So continuing our order to cash business workflow, in the previous step we transacted the work order receipt to finished goods. So this moved material from WIP into finished goods after it was assembled and inspected. And so now this inventory is sitting in finished goods and it's available to ship. So in this step, we will be generating the sales order shipment record to ship this item, this assembly, to the customer. So to do that, we're going to go back to logistics and we're going to go down to the bottom here, sales order shipments, and we are going to create sales order shipment record. So in this case, I'm just going to click go because it will show me all orders that are available to ship out. So in this workflow demonstration, we've been working with Henry Logistics. Here's the sales order we entered, and here is inventory available. You can see here it says quantity available to ship, quantity on hand. So I'm going to check this box saying I want to ship this line item. This other item for a different customer is ready to ship, but I'm going to allow the program manager for that customer to manage that record. So we'll go ahead and ship this item. So I've created a shipment batch number. Here is the shipper number. What it's asking me to do here is available to ship is 500 and there's 500 sitting in finished goods. Do you want to take it from there? And the answer is yes, because that's your only option. And so there's, if you recognize our work order from this demonstration, it is there. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the 500 that are there. So what has happened here now, if you remember in the previous step, this 500 was sitting in finished goods or FGI. Well, now we have added it to the shipment record, and so it's moved this inventory into shipment staging, which is in warehouse 950, which is the shipping warehouse. And so now this is ready to get packaged and shipped. So the shipper is generated based on information entered on the sales order. If you remember when we entered the sales order, we entered these comments. The customer PO number flowed through as expected. If you can imagine, if you are the customer and you want to receive this in your own system, you need to know what your PO number is, which is why this is flowed through there. All right, so we're ready to print that off and get it ready for packaging. The second page of this document is the shipment pick list. What this is doing, in the previous step, we chose where to pull it out of inventory. So in this case, when you print this off, you would give it to your warehouse people. Say, go pull this item, pull it from warehouse 900 finished goods in this location and pull a quantity of 500. So that's really an internal document, and then the first page is the document that's shipped with the material. Now looking back at the workflow, going down to where we generated the sales order shipper, in the same step we are asked to ship confirm the shipper. So when you create the shipper, as I mentioned, it moves the inventory into shipping, but it will stay on hand until you ship confirm the order. So to ship confirm an order, so you have two buttons on the shipment screen. One was the create the shipment record, which we previously did. Now we're going to confirm the shipment record. Most people do not do this until it's left the building. So you packaged it, you got it ready with the paperwork, FedEx, UPS, or your carrier showed up, and then they departed with the shipment. And once that's done, you do a confirm shipment record saying this item has left the building, and you record who it went with and what the tracking number was, and any comments. In some cases you may have will call where somebody picks it up. So I'm just going to say delivered to UPS driver. And then the last step would be to confirm that you really want to ship confirm this material. So I'm just going to pull up our item that we've been working with. So here's our 500 that are sitting in warehouse 950, which is the shipping warehouse. As soon as I confirm this record, that inventory is going to be issued off as sold and will no longer be on hand. So I'll go ahead and click save on the ship confirm transaction, and then I'll refresh my inventory summary screen, item summary screen, and you'll see I have none on hand, none in supply, and I no longer have a demand because I shipped that sales order in full. So this completes both the creating the shipment document and the ship confirm transaction in BAP365. All right, continuing on our order to cash business workflow. In the previous step, we generated the shipper for the assembly that we completed, and then we ship confirmed the order, which sent it out on a carrier and closed the sales order and removed the inventory. So we no longer have that inventory on hand because it now shows as sold. So the next step in the workflow is to generate the sales invoice. So we're now in the finance module. So we'll go ahead and head that way. Finance, we're dealing with sales invoices here. And we're going to use the function create sales invoice from shipper. Now in this case, you could just click go. Most accounting departments like to just click go so they can see what shipments are out there that have not yet been invoiced. In this case, it's our 500 pieces of our H-log that we've been working with, and the checkbox is already checked, so we're going to go ahead and create that invoice. Okay, it is created. Here's the invoice number, and now we're going to manage that invoice record. So here we go. In most cases, finance should not have to do anything more other than generate the invoice. In some cases, there may be a reason to edit, make further comments. I'll just point out on the invoice line, it's calculating the COGS of this order, and in this case, we actually had a negative margin, meaning the assembly cost us more than we're selling it for. So that will help us on future orders to avoid that from happening, or you potentially could go back to the customer and ask for an accommodation on additional costs that were done. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and view the document. So in this case, we're talking about an invoice. So here's the invoice that we have. You'll see that the shipment details show on the invoice. So there was our shipper number. We did UPS ground. Here was the tracking number, and we delivered it to the UPS driver. So I point this out because your shipping department should be cognizant of what they enter in the ship confirm transaction screen, because it will show up on the customer invoice, and so we want to make sure that that information is accurate. So in today's world, most invoices are emailed, and so your finance team could then view the invoice and then go ahead and send it out. So in this case, we are going to send it to Henry Ralph with Henry Logistics and send that out to the customer. This completes the sales invoice generation in BAP365. Now continuing on in our order to cash business workflow, the next step after sales invoice would be to publish your invoice, which is an optional step. Publishing is if you are integrated with QuickBooks Online or any accounting software, if we help you to integrate those, you could publish this invoice back to your accounting system so that you can receive payment once payment comes in against that invoice. Again, it's optional. And then the last step in the order to cash business workflow is to receive the sales order payment. Receive the sales invoice payment, and that is done in your accounting software. So that completes the full round of the order to cash business workflow. Just to summarize, we started with a quote, we entered a customer master, we entered an end item, sales item as an item master, we then created the sales order, and then went to engineering. They created a bill of materials and a routing. Your planning department created a work order. Then MRP, material requirements planning, ran overnight. The next day, your purchasing department would then run the purchasing supply needed report, which shows what supply needs to be ordered in order to fulfill the orders in the system. And they would create raw material purchase orders to send to your suppliers. Then once that material that was ordered was arrived, it would be received by receiving. If it required inspection, quality would do a receiving inspection record. Then we put the inventory away. We issued it to a work order. We did the actual build, so that's where the shop floor assembled the item. It was sent to quality for a COC, Certificate of Conformance inspection. After COC, it went back to the warehouse to receive the assembly back into finished goods. From there, we created a shipper to ship the assembly out, and then we ship confirmed that order. Once we ship confirmed the order, we generated the sales invoice in this previous step, which allowed for eventual publishing of that invoice back to the accounting system and for the accounting department to then receive payment against that sales invoice when it comes in. So this completes the order to cash workflow summary demonstration. Thank you for following along with us, and we believe that this assembly of processes, business processes, physical production processes will greatly enhance your manufacturing operation. So we thank you for taking the time to watch this. We hope you have a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.